What does the Clean Water Act have to say about aquifers? Because they're not
Nothing.
so visible, as navigable waters or the connections.
So, my first answer is sort of flippant, but also accurate. So there's the Safe Drinking Water Act, which regulates to some extent, the primary regulation is injection into aquifers, so as to not contaminate drinking water. This is a big deal with hydraulic fracking, right, where there's a bunch of injection, and that's the reason the BLM's hydraulic fracking rules were overturned, is the court said, you don't have authority, that's the Safe Drinking Water Act. I disagree, personally. I think that it's a land use issue. If you own land and somebody is injecting something into the ground, you would think of that as use of my land. It's kind of what the BLM thought. The court disagreed. The Clean Water Act doesn't deal with aquifers, which is part of one of the problems with it, because clearly things are connected. Now, that said, the significant nexus analysis will take should take into account what's called hyperrheic flow. I hang out with those scientists that I just grab little words and try to throw them in wherever I can. That's that sort of subsurface flow. So the Obama rule would take that into account. The new rule would, because the Scalia version would, because it requires surface connection. Unsatisfying answer, but that's largely it. And then extraction of water is state law. So whether you get to drill a well and extract water and use it, that's state law. Yes, sir.
The open comment period is there for the WOTUS. I think it was
believe it
closed and
ended
then delayed, and I
27th.
think it's still up. Do you know what they're?
I vaguely remember it ending September 27th. Was it extended?
I think it was extended into November, but I'm not positive, and I don't know exactly what they're asking about, so I didn't know.
Well, the WOTUS rule is just to rescind the Obama one. It's not to replace it with it.
Right.
But if it has been extended, and I must have overlooked that, and it is certain, that's one of the, Lauren promised she'd ask, what can we do?
It's just about to.
All of these changes do have public comment periods. They're required to go through, depending on the nature of it, a notice and comment period in which the proposed rule is published in the Federal Register, and you'll usually receive notice. Most of these, because they're significant enough, there are newspaper articles about it, in which a 60 or 90-day public comment period is open.
I think Friends of Clearwater had a link, so I'll check there and understand, see what the deadline is.
But that's one of the most direct ways to participate in the rulemaking. In fact, it's the only way to participate in the rulemaking process. Short of just, so we're talking about the executive branch. But the executive responds to pressure from Congress, and Congress responds to pressure from, on occasion, its constituents. And so that is one of the ways to go about this process too. I've never having been a member of Congress, I don't know how they react when people call on them, but apparently they do take it seriously.
So we should call our Congress people and comment on proposed changes in regulations.
I always joke about my students with these darn busybodies that are always wrecking everything by thinking they can be involved in the process. And the reason I regularly joke about that is because it comes up all the time. You see examples where people getting involved, and sometimes it requires being willing to, to sue an agency, and maybe that's not something that like this group does, but that's part of the process too, holding them accountable. And so Friends of the Clearwater is really active in that front. There are people, there's an attorney, former student of mine who's active in Moscow that is unafraid to challenge the administration. So that's another way to go about it too. And it works, it does work. And it's how the system is supposed to work. You hear the executive or people complain about all these darn groups suing us, like, you don't comply with the law, that's how it's supposed to go.
Any other questions? Other questions or comments? Joanne?
At the beginning, when you were mentioning the benefits, the costs and benefits, and one was in the billions, one was in the millions, how do they actually calculate the benefits? I mean, people didn't die, but how do they
So,
quantify?
way outside my area of expertise, but if you wanted to, for the Clean Water Act, or for the Clean Air Act example, The EPA maintains a page with those studies and goes through and talks about exactly how they went about doing it. But it's a much longer process. So when they established the criteria pollutants, lead, ozone, 2 types of particulate matter. We had issues with particulate matter this past summer, as you're all aware. That's PM2.5, the smoke. Carbon monoxide, I'm gonna forget 2 of them. When those were established, it was a long process in which they identified all of the harms to people based on particular levels of that pollutant in the ambient air. And that's what the ambient air quality standards are. So the agency, years-long process, if it's this level, how many people are likely to get sick? How many children are going to get lead poisoning? And then the part that maybe is dissatisfying is that they then put a dollar amount on that. And I mean, to me, that's dissatisfying. Well, one child with lead poisoning is worth X number of dollars. And then extrapolate from there. So 200,000 children, fewer children get asthma, and that has a certain dollar amount. Now again,
That's what I was wondering, do they have $1 per person?
by and large, yeah. But some of it's like fewer missed days at work, fewer healthcare costs. So you can put a dollar amount on treating somebody with asthma. You can put a dollar amount on treating certain activities, and that's money you don't have to spend anymore. So that's a benefit. Money that doesn't have to go to those reasons.
Because they keep saying, it'll hurt business to do such and such.
Now so the problem is that is totally true. But, and it depends on how you want to emphasize it, that individual business will no longer be able to pass the cost of its activity on to the rest of us. Remember the concept of externalities, right? It's something you don't have to consider because it's borne by somebody else. And so a child with asthma, because you've been polluting, you don't have to pay for that. And so you just it's the cost of your activity is passed on to somebody else. Well, what do environmental laws do? They say, no, you now have to pay the actual cost of your behavior. If you're polluting and that's harming other people, we're going to internalize those costs. And that, of course, does harm that individual because now they have to actually pay what they should have been paying if the system, and Professor Burnett could explain this a lot better than I could. But if we had perfect information, no transaction costs, we're able to put all the costs where they should be, then we wouldn't need any of this. But we don't. And so the rules do then internalize those costs, and now we have to pay them as a polluter.
So I think we need to stop there. Help me thank Professor Long.